Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's great to have you with us.
Hello.
So today we're looking at quite a significant recent development in UK social policy, a new initiative focused on youth unemployment.
That's right. A big topic.
And to get under the hood, we've been listening to a specific source, an episode from the Westferry Times podcast. It was called Chances and Choices, Unpacking Liz Kendall's Youth Guarantee.
Yes. Hosted by Emily, featuring James, who's a policy analyst, specifically a youth employment specialist.
Exactly. So our aim here is to sort of pull out the key insights from that conversation, what this youth guarantee thing actually is, why it's happening now, the reactions, and, what might happen next.
Absolutely. Let's unpack what Emily and James discussed on the Westferry Times show.
Okay, let's dive in. First off, based on that discussion, what is the core idea of this Liz Kendall Youth Guarantee?
Well, the absolute heart of it is trying to make sure every single young person, specifically between 18 and 21,
Right, that age group.
gets a solid offer, either education or a job or some kind of training. The guarantee part is key.
So it's about preventing people from falling through the cracks at that transition point.
Precisely. It's aimed squarely at the problem of NEETs.
Needs not in education, employment, or training.
Yeah, and the Westferry Times episode really highlighted the scale. They mentioned nearly 1 million young people in the UK are currently classed as NEET.
Wow, nearly 1 million. That's a staggering figure, isn't it?
It really is. It shows why there's such a focus on this.
And the source mentioned the money behind it, too, the investment.
It did. The figure discussed was £45 million for the initial phase.
45 million. And how is that being spent? The podcast mentioned a specific approach, didn't it? Something about trailblazers.
Yes, exactly. Trailblazers. So that £45 million isn't spread thinly everywhere just yet. It's concentrated in 7 specific areas.
Okay.
These are the trailblazers. Each of these regions gets £5 million of that pot.
5 million each. To do what, specifically?
To basically design and run programs that connect young people in their area to these guaranteed opportunities, the jobs, the training, the education places.
Got it. And did Emily and James mention which areas these are, these first 7?
They did. Let's see. Liverpool was mentioned, the west of England, Tees Valley,
Okay.
Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, the West Midlands, East Midlands, and also parts of London.
Right, so quite a spread geographically, but focused initially.
That seems to be the idea. Test it out in these areas first.
Okay, so that covers the what's. Now, the Westferry Times episode also got into the why. Why launch this now? What were the drivers they talked about?
It sounded like there were kind of 2 main things pushing this.
Okay.
First, just that growing worry about the sheer number of young people not in work or study. That million NEETs figure again. It's a big social concern.
Understandable. And the second driver?
The second one ties into the government's wider aim to, well, reduce the welfare bill.
Ah, right. The cost aspect. Did the source mention the scale of that bill?
It did, and it was pretty eye-watering. They cited the current annual cost for working-age benefits at around $150 billion.
$150 billion a year. Wow.
Yeah. So the thinking discussed in the podcast seems to be
Yeah.
get young people into work or training early.
And potentially reduce their reliance on benefits long term.
Exactly. That's the hope, anyway, that it could eventually help chip away at that massive $150 billion figure.
So it's very much being positioned as part of a broader welfare reform strategy, not just a standalone youth thing.
Absolutely. The podcast conveyed Liz Kendall's view on this. The message seems to be support is there for people who genuinely can't work.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also an expectation, maybe a stronger expectation now, that if you can work, you should take up the opportunities available.
And the youth guarantee is meant to provide those opportunities, essentially.
That's the link they're making.
Yeah.
Provide the path, and then expect people to take it if they're able.
Did the Westferry Times discussion touch on any other parts of this welfare reform push?
Yeah, briefly. They mentioned things like reassessing long-term sickness and disability benefits as being part of the same overall direction.
Okay.
And also, interestingly, an intention to boost mental health support was highlighted, sort of recognizing that getting people work-ready isn't just about skills.
Right. Addressing underlying barriers.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so we have the plan, the rationale. What about the reaction? The source suggested it wasn't all positive.
Definitely not uniform. The Westferry Times episode was clear that reactions have been, well, mixed.
So what did they say about the supporters? What's the positive take?
Well, supporters, as discussed in the podcast, see it as really necessary. A vital chance for young people who are maybe drifting.
Filling a gap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also helping employers fill skill shortages, guiding young people into sectors where they're needed.
Okay. And the flip side, What were the criticisms Emily and James covered?
The main worry flagged by critics seems to be about it being potentially punitive.
Punitive how?
The fear, as explained in the source, is around conditionality.
Hmm.
Like, what happens if a young person refuses an offer? Could their benefits be cut?
Okay. Sanctions, essentially.
That's the concern. And specifically, that this could hit vulnerable young people hardest. Those may be facing really complex issues.
Did the source specify who was raising these particular concerns?
Yes, it mentioned that some charities working with young people and also some labor MPs have voiced these worries publicly. They've apparently urged the government to sort of reconsider aspects of the plan, especially around that potential impact on the vulnerable.
It helps to have concrete examples. Did the Westferry Times conversation include any real-life stories to illustrate what this could mean?
It did touch upon one. During the initiative's launch event, which the source covered, they shared a story from Liverpool.
Okay.
It was about a young woman who'd had a really tough time, sadly lost her mother, but she got help from a local charity called Thrive,
Thrive, right.
and they supported her into an apprenticeship in construction, I think it was.
And the point was,
The point, as presented in the episode, was to show how that kind of targeted support, the support the guarantee aims to facilitate, can make a massive difference, turn things around for someone.
that does bring it home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, looking forward then. What did Emily and James identify as the key things that will make or break this youth guarantee? What needs to happen for it to actually work?
The big word that came up repeatedly in their discussion was collaboration.
Collaboration between who? All the different groups involved.
Exactly. Government agencies, schools and colleges, employers obviously, and those third sector support organizations like Thrive. The source stressed that getting them all working together properly is absolutely crucial. It won't work in silos.
Makes sense. Anything else besides collaboration?
Yes, the quality of the opportunities was another big point. It can't just be any old job or course.
It needs to be meaningful.
Right. Something that actually matches the young person's skills or interests. Something with prospects. And linked to that, the support systems around it.
Like mentoring or help with transport, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Pastoral care, practical help, the stuff that helps someone not just get the role, but actually succeed in it. That was seen as vital in the source discussion.
Did the episode also talk about the likely challenges, the hurdles they might face rolling this out?
Oh yes, several were flagged. One is making sure the opportunities genuinely align with what young people want and can do. That's not always easy.
Tailoring it, yeah.
Another big one is regional disparity. Making sure a young person in Tees Valley gets as good a shot as someone in, say, Cambridgeshire.
Avoiding a postcode lottery.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And also providing the right level of support for young people who have additional needs, maybe learning difficulties or mental health challenges. That was definitely highlighted as a tough but essential piece.
So it sounds simple on paper, guarantee an offer, but the execution is where all the complexity lies.
That's exactly the picture the Westferry Times episode painted. And because of that complexity,
Yes.
they really stress the need for ongoing monitoring and evaluation, tracking what's actually happening on the ground.
Learning as you go.
Absolutely. Seeing what works, what doesn't, and being prepared to adapt the program. The source suggested that flexibility and checking the results will be non-negotiable for this to have a chance.
That adaptability point feels really key for something this ambitious.
Couldn't agree more. Policy meets reality, right?
Right. So just to recap our journey through that Westferry Times episode, we've looked at what Liz Kendall's youth guarantee is, that promise of education, training, or a job for 18 to 21-year-olds.
Tackling that near million neat figure.
With that initial 45 million pot focused on those trailblazer regions, then the why, concern about youth disengagement, yes, but also very much linked to that drive to reduce the $150 billion welfare bill.
As part of that wider welfare reform picture.
Then the mixed reactions discussed in the source supporters seeing opportunity, critics fearing punitive measures, especially for the vulnerable, hearing concerns from charities and MPs.
And that positive story from Liverpool illustrating the potential upside.
And finally, looking ahead, the future factors. The absolute need for collaboration, quality opportunities, tackling those regional and individual challenges.
And that crucial point about ongoing monitoring and adjustment.
Yeah, I think that covers the ground discussed in the source pretty well.
It gives a really good snapshot based on that Westferry Times conversation. The policy's aims, context, the initial buzz around it.
And for you listening, hopefully getting this overview helps you understand a key piece of current UK social policy puzzle. It says a lot about government priorities around youth employment and that ongoing welfare reform debate.
It's definitely a policy with sort of dual aspects. High hopes for positive change, but also those real worries about potential negative consequences that the source highlighted.
Which leads to maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawing from the source material. Given those mixed reactions Emily and James discussed, and the challenges everyone seems to acknowledge, how might those different perspectives, the optimism versus the concern, actually shape how this 45 million initiative gets implemented?
And crucially, what will the real outcome be for the young people it's supposed to help?
Exactly. How will it play out on the ground? That's the big question mark, isn't it?
It certainly is a complex situation and
Yeah.
definitely one to keep an eye on.
Well, that's all we have time for in this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time on the Deep Dive.